also the first part of the month. So I'm doubly grateful. So this is a special month because in Western culture, February marks the month of love. So on the 14th, the persons that we love, we give them a card, we take them out to dinner, and of course we have to give them expensive jewelry. Because it's not love if it's not K, right? Every kiss begins with K, right? But in a way, that's really sad, right? Because what do people that overachieve do? Since they don't want to invest the time, they go out and buy jewelry. So, would you rather have the emotions and the closeness, the intimacy, or would you rather have a diamond? I'd go for the closest of intimacy. So, but that gets to the heart of, what is love? We like to mention it. How many people here have been in love? Everybody's been in love, so we think we know what it is. Some type of affection mixed with an emotion that we call intimacy, mixed with a part of our beingness that becomes somehow attached to the other person. And usually when it happens quickly, we say, oh, I would love you forever. How many of us have seen the end of forever more than once? Yeah. So what did they really mean? What does this mean? And so, you know, I rejoice and give thanks that I go to a spiritual place where people talk to me about those things quite often. Like I did counseling today on love before I came here. And we have a problem with love. So I'm going to talk about what it is with the distance of knowledge and of academics and of the history of that term. Because I think in the human evolution, you really come to know what love is when you're on the way out. So when they're closing that box and you take your nap for a while as your body decomposes, you finally understand what the important parts of what we call love is. So first, let's go back a few thousand years. A long time ago, in Greece, they had a guy named Aristotle. And Aristotle asked some questions of the environment he was in. And he says, you know, it appears that everything is ordered. And I have an idea about how to put that in order. And so his scribe, because really philosophers didn't write their own stuff. They had a guy that would take down the notes. It's the modern day microphone. So that book is called Das Physikas, the physical world. So he gave a name to animals, flowers, most everything. He's the first scientist to put things in order in a perceptibly human rationale. And then he started talking about things you can't see or discern with the five senses that pretty much come off as effects. You know, our pastor last week was saying something, the wind. Now, you can't see the wind. You cannot see the air molecules attaining velocity and direction, but you can feel the wind on your face. You can feel the wind on many different ways. We know different types of wind. And then he started talking about the possibility of what could be a prime mover, what could be the initial essence of things. Because more of our universe is not seen than is seen. You know, recently, rather recently, in fact, just the last 20 years, the advent of dark matter and dark energy, there's more of that than there is of the universe that we can discern with our five senses. And the reason we call it dark is because we don't actually know what it is. We have some ideas, and we continually have ideas about it. You know, in the last 10 years, we've had scientific experiments that when we look at the clocks, finished before they started. What does that mean? How can something finish before it starts? Well, they have relative clocks. So when we start talking about something metaphysical, meta is the Greek word, is not beyond, but after, with regard to distance. So he defines everything in the physical world, but there are some stuff we got to talk about that's outside of that. And that's what we call metaphysical. So it doesn't mean beyond, as in we're going from the mundane to the spiritual world. Only in, you know, the 20th century we make that distinction on a spiritual basis. But fundamentally, metaphysical just means that we're talking about things outside the realm of definition being able to be discerned by the five senses. So when we talk about spirituality, we're saying that we're classifying the metaphysical that we're engaging in as strictly spiritual. We have come to the point where doctrine and dogma, they're good stories, but they no longer reflect our stories. And that's why in the New Testament it says, the Old Testament's just for our learning. Because things are changing, and we're at the point now where we can't really understand the modality of the stories, you know, like Samson. On one level, it's a story about a really strong guy that she cut his hair without his permission, and he couldn't do anything after that. Really? If I cut your hair, do you lose your strength? Some people would. But do we really have a closeness of understanding with that story? No. However, we talk about spirit, and we say our body is composed of the chunky stuff we call matter, so that's the body. Then we have the stuff that's like a battery. You know, it's got liquid, it's got some physical stuff, but it's the way the molecules are in action that we are talking about. In a battery, we're not concerned with the battery itself, the physical aspects of the battery, because if you take it all apart, no electricity flows through it. But if you put it together in certain amounts of ratio, guess what? We start our car, we keep the lights on, we run our boombox. All wonderful things can happen. We can even kill somebody without electricity. And we can bring somebody back to life. So I said, well, Max, how does this happen? Once you're dead, you're dead. I go, I don't know. I've been dead a few times myself. And when that electricity courses through your body, number one, it hurts a whole bunch. And number two, well, where was I? Where did I go? What happened? Because according to the machines, when you're flatlined, that's it, you're dead. But they can't say that anymore. The definition for death has been extended. They brought children back after 20 minutes. You would figure if you're going to be dead permanently, after the 15-minute point, I'd be gone. Well, no movement there, that's call it. And it gets called every day. But then there's those singular moments, those beautiful miracles where the kid coughs, comes back, and you're going, what? How come this one comes back, this one doesn't? So there's something more at stake. And for us in metaphysical spirituality, this is the part we're concerned with. There's no doctrine and dogma for spirit. It just is. And in that way, sometimes New Age or New Thought movements are considered more Eastern than Western. Because we start talking and sounding like Hindus and Buddhists and Zoroastrians, because the narrative, the sacred narrative, does not matter. In fact, the spiritual narrative remains the same. How many people have been healed through spirit? Could you actually write a story about it? Sure, but go ahead and define how you got healed, exactly. Because where you might got healed of something, I might not. But we have some fundamental ideas on what that process might be. And that's why we have a statement of beliefs. We start developing a corpus of narratives that help us to understand what it is we believe. And at the core of this narrative in metaphysical spirituality, we have that term like everybody else, love. But what's the difference? We start talking about this unconditional thing. So let's go right back to the Greeks right now and say, how does this come about, this unconditional thing? Because basically, unconditioned means without condition. And as long as you're a human being in the flesh, guess what? We always have conditions. It's very hard to be unconditional anything. But that's okay, because it's about approximations. So the first thing that the Greeks did was they followed that body, mind, spirit thing. In fact, they had many different divisions of what a human being is. And they learned that from the Egyptians before them, who had almost 12. Your shadow has a soul. Your heart has a soul. Your stomach has a soul. The brain, they could not conceptualize the composition of the brain at that time. But something was happening out there, and even it had a soul. So what is the soul? Some type of non-physical entity that has identity within itself. So they would say, my ka, which means my shadow. And they would express a way that the shadow thinks and moves and is independent of the body that it's attached to. Similarly, we think of our spirit as not really being an integral part of the body, but it is integrally attached to the body. So, there we go. We have the body. The Greeks refer to that as eros. Eros is where we get erotic from. Now, sex is very different to the world than it is to Christianity. In some aspects, it's a control measure. In some aspects, it's just our animal nature. Sex is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with sex. You should have it because your skin is an organ that desires touch. There's a story about, in Islam, about a king who wanted to be compassionate. And part of that was extending benefit or fortune to others. So anyway, he had conquered his enemy. And there were children involved. He said, you can't kill the children. Allah forbids the killing of innocents. But we can't have them growing up and taking revenge upon us. So here's what you do. For the women, you dress in hijab, but you also have gloves. You are never to touch to the children. You are never to speak to the children. You are never to act in any manner that you're human and interacting with their humanness. all the babies died within 6 months. Failure to thrive. Because guess what? Human beings need to be touched by other human beings. So, in one way, eros is not about sexuality at all. It's about touch. It's about interacting on a physical level. Now, in America, since we sell everything with sex, guess what happens? They turn this aspect of natural intimacy into a marketing device. And then religion says, look at all the stuff that happens when people touch inappropriately. So the Old and New Testament are filled with stories, because it's not the sex that's the problem. It's the mind dealing with the other person that they've touched intimately. That is the problem. That's where the sin is. Because if you really love somebody, right, it's okay to touch them. It's the guilt, the deception, the proprietorship, the gender issues, all of that other stuff that gets you in trouble, because that's where the sin is. What is the sin? That is breaking the rules or distancing yourself with God because you have an agenda that is what? Selfish. I love you, honey, forever. But if you don't do this, and you don't touch me in this manner, or you can't do this, or you can't do that, then what happens is it's no longer sex, right? It's no longer intimate touch. There's always boundaries, constraints, restrictions. And in and of themselves, those are not wrong. I mean, in our society right now, when a woman says no, it doesn't matter at what point in time she says no, what does that mean? All intimate touch stops right at that point. And that should be okay. Because if you really love somebody, you don't want them to suffer because they touched you. It should be a joy. Rejoice and give thanks in all things. So if whatever it is you're doing is an expression of joy and giving thanks to Spirit for the opportunity and the ability, then it's a great positive in your life, right? But what happens with inappropriate touch? It ends up destroying. Who does the destroying? Both sides of that equation do. Because you know it wasn't appropriate. There's no joy. If there's no joy, well, you don't have to be there. Oh, if there's no joy, then what's the point? So the physical aspect of eros is that your body feels joy. You know when you feel good, right? On a good day, you wake up and you're feeling great. Where do you feel it? Feel it all over your body. For some people, somebody will point to their stomach and say, I feel good here. Like if I ate a good, satisfying meal. But you haven't eaten anything. Or your chest feels good. Your heart feels full, overfull sometimes. So your body has a capability of feeling that joy. Next thing is your mind. So what is the mind? The mind is the brain in operation. You used to think that the mind itself was a soul. But we've all had that experience. So many people have been unconscious one way or another. Yeah. Where do you go? Anesthetists, the guys who put you under when you have an operation, it's a huge question in their field. Where does the identity of I, where do I go? Well, the drugs have the ability to erase I out of your brain. So the chemical compositions, the neuropeptide composition of your identity gets to be stilled through the use of drugs. That's why sometimes you'll come back, like my ex-wife, Nicole, when she was there when I came back, I thought she was a candy striper because she was very young. So I talked to her for about 10 minutes as a candy striper. She goes, "You were very different." So what happened? How come I came back that way? Well, because sometimes the drugs affect the neuropeptide composition in such a way that your identity, the normative aspects of that composition, are disrupted. Sometimes when people have amnesia, and it's temporary, what helps them to come back? The normative narrative of their life. They start remembering certain things, and then after a while, enough of it shifts the composition back to where, oh yeah, I'm Max. Yeah. But Max, chemically, is many different people and many different drugs. Many people have ever taken drugs for depression. Don't raise your hand. But you know, you get depressed sometimes and you need a little bit of help readjusting chemical composition in your brain. It's like adding a battery enhancer when the battery gets a little weak. So is that really you? Well, metaphysical spirituality practitioners would say, no, that's not you, that's just your brain needs to be reconstituted so you can feel the identity of your normal chemical composition. And then lastly, the spiritual part. Well, let me get back to the mind thing. In Greek, that is phileo, where the Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. That's affection. Affection, support, that feeling of belonging with other people. That's the mental aspect, because it's more philosophical than it is physical. And then the last one is agapeo, or agape, which means divine love, and which we redefine as unconditional love. So when we talk about unconditional love, we're talking about, hey, there's no condition under which I love you. I don't care if you're mean to me, you insult me. And during wartime, those are the soldiers who sometimes don't fire back. And it costs them their lives. So in a way, agape is like sacrifice. If I love you so much, I give up my own identity for your happiness, for you going ahead, for you getting ahead. That is the courage of love. That is what we all aspire to. But it's impossible. Why is that? It's because unconditional love is limitless love. And we are finite people. Spirit with a capital S is infinite. Always has been, always will be. Transcends any aspect of the physical or the mental. So how do we love each other metaphysically? And so we could say, do we sacrifice for that person? Yeah, that can be sometimes. How do we do this on a daily level? This is where the Eastern people have the better definition. Whenever you annihilate the I, sometimes we say, whenever you get rid of your ego and you get out of your own way, pure unconditional love is available during that instance. But as a human being, you struggle with it every day. Because there's somebody that's going to cut in front of you in traffic. But we do have those people that have attempted that, and we remember them for it. Mahatma Gandhi. He was a man who gave up anything and everything, so he could live in a perpetual state of agape, divine love. So I'm mixing the two cultures there, but that's how I understand it. he used to weave his own diaper looking thing, and people used to laugh at him. It kind of reminded me of Tina Turner in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. People would look at him and say, well, he's just a raggedy man. But yet he was the hero of that generation. He encouraged his fellow Hindus and Indians to stand by in love while the British troops shot at them. So many Indians and Hindus died that British troops didn't want to shoot at them anymore because they would do nothing. And if you're a real warrior, you cannot conquer something that is passive. War is conflict. And no one takes any joy in victory if there was no conflict there. If you were just shooting fish in a barrel, you'd stop shooting fish after a while, because there's no honor in that. And with that comes a fundamental element of love. Love is fundamentally about honor, the point of honor. If at any time you think of yourself before you think of the other person, that's not unconditional love. It's conditional. It's very hard to do, and in a way, but it's very easy to do. Because we can say the words all day long. I've done it. I love you, I love you, I love you. But, oh, you need to do this for me. You won't say it out loud, and sometimes you don't even recognize it in yourself until after the relationship is over. And then you feel bad about it. So, in a month where we celebrate love, I would advise, let us return to the fundamental and start where love starts. And that is, in most sacred scriptures, what's the first love we have? It's to deity. To love your God as you see him, her, them, according to the sacred narrative. Love them with all your heart, mind, and soul. Then who's the second? Love yourself. Because as deity loves you and you love yourself, once you come and rejoice in being able to understand your relationship with Spirit in you, then you can share that with other people. And that's sharing the unconditional love. Will you still be human? Will you still have a bad day? Will you still flip up that driver? Probably. But let us recognize where we're at in the process. And each day anew, as soon as the sun rises, say, today I will share the love that Spirit has for me with everyone I come in contact. So if we look at it from that perspective, it's a little bit different. Every day is Valentine's Day. That's the coolest thing in the world. It's a perpetual state of, hey, I love you. Doesn't matter what you think about me. But since Spirit's love me and you're here, let us celebrate and rejoice. Rejoice and give thanks and all the wonderful things that we wake up to every day. For me, sometimes it's rejoice and give thanks. You're awake. You're still here. Doesn't matter how much pain there is, you're still here. And then I can share that with my pastor, with my friends, and everybody is my friend. Am I still going to be a pain in the butt sometimes? Oh yeah. I just ask forgiveness for being human. And I leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Max, for sharing the multiple aspects of love, and I hope that that's what we got out of that lesson this morning, and how to again practice unconditional love within the scope of our everyday behavior. I do have a couple of messages before I do the meditation. We, the last Tuesday of this month, we'll have a drum circle here. So it'll be here inside the space, and it is also a potluck, and I wanted to remind everybody of that again. And I also am renewing our registration, our nonprofit status registration in the next couple of weeks. So I wanted you to be aware of that as well. And I will be making another payment for our rent here in this wonderful space at the Center for Spiritual Living. So we're very grateful to Martin for allowing us, and the board for allowing us to be here. What I'd like to do now is have a short meditation. So if you just take a nice deep breath in and blow that out. Another deep breath in. Just allow your body to relax. And then just breathe normally and comfortably, but deeply. We're going to visit a series of opportunities to feel love. So as we're breathing and relaxing and letting our body relax our mind. If anything comes up into our mind, we acknowledge it, don't resist it, and then just bring your mind back to your breath. So in our mind's eye, what we're going to do is set up a memory for physical love. Physical love, eros. I want you to imagine being on your mother's lap when you were a child, or being in your father's lap, or being in the arms of a sibling, or holding one of your children in your arms. That deep, intense, passionate love that you feel. And when you touch that person, you just feel so connected to them and overwhelmed with intimate, physical love. All warm and safe and comfortable. You could say anything. Trust completely and implicitly. Just stay in that memory and in that feeling. So it takes a full hold on our understanding, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. For those of us who have had children, you know, when we hold that child in our arms, we more than just love them. We fall in love with them. Every little thing they do, we rejoice in. They are the most special human being on the planet. And yet they're part of you. We accept this love fully. We give this love fully. And then move our memory to a friend. A friend that we can count on in times of trouble, a friend who always gives us the most heartfelt, sincere advice for our best and highest good. Someone that we know we could go to without any kind of judgment. And the love that we have between us is so special, so concrete. This is brotherly love. Brotherly love. It's real. And again, it makes us feel safe, it makes us feel secure, it makes us feel special, and it makes us feel deeply connected to that person, to that friend. A friend till the end. And just stay in that memory for a minute longer. Remembering a conversation or a walk in the park or on the beach or a lunch that you shared together, and the laughter, the hugs, and the gratitude for that special relationship. Now we're going to create a memory of agape love. How do we create a memory of agape love? We create these memories every day. So I want you to think about a time in the space of your life when everything was lined up, when the sun was shining on your face, the wind was blowing through your hair, you smell flowers in the air, your bees buzzing, the birds chirping, whatever it is that opened you up so completely, full of gratitude, knowing that the Creator loves you. And you know this because all these beautiful things, all of this beautiful life, all these wonderful relationships, all this joy, all this happiness, all this love is for you. Just stay in that thought. Remembering that space, wherever it was, whenever it was. And with a deep breath in, we acknowledge with deep, sincere gratitude that we are loved and that we love. We make our own personal promise to share that in whatever ways our days allow. Another deep breath in. Release that breath. Bringing ourselves awake and aware and grateful and happy. Excellent. So when you're ever feeling blue or alone or sad, you should remember that you are loved, deeply loved, every minute of every day, always and forever. So, there you go. Okay. So, hold on just one second. I wanted to mention something. Something was brought to my attention today, and I realized that I never really explained this. So I thought it was a good idea that I do just that. So how many of you know the mission of the Temple of Spiritual Awareness? It is to inspire, encourage, and teach through the increase of personal and spiritual awareness, right? You know that, right? So that's awesome, and that's what we do. And then on the bottom of our little flyer, we have our little affirmation, which I always give to Reverend Lulu to do, but I'm just going to read it. And it says, I am light, I am love, I am peace, I am. It was brought to my attention that it may seem a little blasphemous even, that we would use the phrase I am, because this in the Hebrew scriptures is a representation of the Creator, of Yahweh, Jehovah. And I wanted to share with you why this became our affirmation. Why do we say it like that? So I happen to be a student of Wayne Dyer. How many others of us have actually read Wayne Dyer? We love Wayne Dyer, yeah? So one of the ideas that Wayne and so many other metaphysical, New Age, spiritualist teachers share is that we are co-creators of our reality, yes?
Yes.
We co-create our reality. And so we co-create our reality because we have an intimate, loving connection with the Creator of the universe, right? So we work with the Creator to do that. And so we also understand that the power of creation is within us. How is it within us? Because the spark of life is within us. What is that spark of life? Of life. That is, I am, right? That's what makes me a living soul. The power of the Creator of the universe that dwells within me. So the I am is in me. I am. Yes, Reverend Max.
Plus, the whole phrase is, I am, I am.
I am that I am.
Which I choose to rep myself as, I am.
So the thinking here in this phrase, this phraseology, was intended so that we recognize that we are what we create ourselves to be by choice. So I am light. I am light because I choose to shine the light of spirit that dwells in me in this world that is sometimes very dark, right? I am love because I remember the aspects, all three aspects of love that are described through metaphysical spirituality, and I embrace those ideas, and then I reflect them out in my life and implement them in my daily living. Right? I am love. And I am peace. Because all of this behavior brings me a great measure of solace and peace that resides within me so that I can co-create with the great I am the reality in which I dwell. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it was not my intention to be blasphemous. It was my intention to be in line with what our mission is, right? To inspire, to empower, because this gives you power, understanding your relationship to the Creator of the universe, and teach through the increase of personal and spiritual awareness. So really I can tell you all this great stuff, right? I can stand up here and say this stuff all day long, and it will mean absolutely nothing unless you actually find it useful in some way and then use it in your life, right? But I give you that opportunity. Here you go. Here's some tools. Try them out and see if they work for you. But I'm hoping they do. So I just thought I'd share that with you this morning, and I was very grateful for the opportunity to do that, and I have not done that. So I probably should be a little bit more mindful when I start saying things, and people just go, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. So I should clarify. So I wanted to
Thank
share that. You're very welcome. It's my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
It's my pleasure. So let's take a nice deep breath. And let that go. Very good. And I'm going to turn off the Facebook page. So goodbye, y'all. It's been fun. We'll see you another time. And we are going to have messages from Spirit.